Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and I have a question for you guys. Do you ever get the feeling that maybe Schleich once in a while kind of trolls us, and they like to occasionally put out a figure that doesn't look that great, and just to see what we're gonna do or say about it? Because I really get the feeling that they do from time to time. We know for a fact that Schleich is very capable of producing incredible dinosaur figures. They've shown us that time and time again, but then every so often they release a figure that is just so off in comparison to what you normally see from them, and so different, and it's not different in a good way, that I really feel like that sometimes they do it on purpose and I really don't understand it. But this is their Schleich Cryolophosaurus for their 2020 year. And when I had initially learned that they were going to be making a Cryolophosaurus, I really did have some pretty high hopes, because over the past few years, Schleich has really pumped out some incredible figures, and I had definitely given myself some pretty high expectations for this Cryolophosaurus, but unfortunately, it does not live up to those expectations at all. It almost reminds me of their Acrocanthosaurus a few years ago, which is definitely not a very good figure. However, I will say that this figure in person doesn't look as bad as the promotional images had led me to believe. It definitely looks a little better, but still, it doesn't really have too much going on for it that even has an appeal factor to it. But I will say that doesn't mean that I hate the figure either, because again, I'm just a sucker for dinosaurs and I really want to like everything that comes out dinosaur related. So I guess let's get a closer look. We'll take a look at the detailing up close and figure out just how much we like or dislike this figure. So looking at the head sculpt, you've got a reddish type of a maroon type eye. For the eye paint, the pupil is a black color. It's kind of sloppy. It's not really perfectly in there. The eye paint in general is a little sloppy, and I feel like a different color eye could have made this look a little better as far as the head goes. And there's also not really much of a gloss. It looks like maybe the pupil is glossed, but I think we need the entire eye to be glossed, because I can tell you one thing. When I look into someone's eyes, I definitely don't just see their pupil glossing, but that is what I'm seeing here on this Cryolophosaurus. Really sloppy eye paint on this side for sure. So that's a bit of a downside straight away, but we also have to take into consideration the fact that the Cryolophosaurus's head and neck are unreasonably fat. I don't know why. The neck and head are pretty much the same size the whole way through, and I think that is one of the biggest factors that come into play when it comes to the appearance of the figure and why people don't like it, is the fact that the neck and the head are pretty much the same size the whole way through. There's no difference, and the neck looks really fat and awkward. Very strange, and you can see that even the shape of the neck right here, it doesn't look natural. It looks almost like it's a robotic Cryolophosaurus, as it's like perfectly straight. There's no imperfections in the skin or anything like you would expect to see on a real living animal. If we open the mouth, it does have an articulated jaw. It just doesn't open very wide. You can see the inside of the mouth, even in there, doesn't look very good. Like, there's a huge gap right here behind the skin flap of the mouth. The only thing inside the mouth that is painted out is the tongue, and just the tongue alone. The upper side to the inside of the mouth has some okay detailing. It also looks awkward because when we look into the back, you don't see a throat or anything. You just see the mechanics of the articulated jaw, which is again very strange. It's these figures like this that really make me wonder what is going on when it comes to Schleich sometimes. You can see the teeth are painted pretty sloppily, but they're not terrible. You can see only one tooth there has like a little bit of paint and has the most part missed the paint, but also some of the paint has run on to other teeth. But again, it's not that bad. The teeth are pretty decent looking. They're definitely not as bad as the Spinosaurus was from last year, that's for sure. The articulated jaw does work pretty well. It doesn't open too wide, but I think it opens wide enough. So that is at least a plus. The crest of the Cryolophosaurus does look pretty darn nice as far as the detailing goes. And again, I love the bluish coloration, and then we lead up into like a purplish pinkish color, and then up into that really nice vibrant orange on the crest. Very natural colorations, I think. Something I could have seen this dinosaur having on its head. And I really do, again, like the coloration in general. You've got a little purple back here as well. And you can see different variations of blue in general in the head sculpt. You've got a light blue and then a darker blue that comes up around the jaw line and then up over onto the top of the head. And then again down into the eye socket and everything. And then I feel like the jaw, the lower jaw, is a little bit slightly different variation of blue in comparison to the rest of the blues. So there is some nice blue color variation throughout. As we lead into the neck, you can see kind of some skin folding and skin stretching down here. The Cryolophosaurus does appear to have its head stretched pretty far, which does also make the skin stretch pretty darn nicely, I will say, and also kind of makes the animal look like it's flexing and tensing the neck a little bit, so there is some sort of decent movement shown in the animal. You can also see some decent sculpt work as far as the scaling. As we move down into the arms, you can see the shoulder blade is present there. We come down into the hands, and the hands look alright. They don't look amazing or anything, but they're not that bad either. You can again see some skin stretching and skin folding right there. Skin stretching off of the leg as well, so we do have some movement being shown throughout the sculpt of the figure. Really nice skin texture, honestly, throughout the stomach region. I really do like the scaling all over the animal, and the paint application is all really natural looking as well. I like this black stripe that kind of squiggles down through the animal, and it's really nicely applied with an airbrush, so it's very natural looking on the figure. You've got some decent sculpt and detail up here as well as far as the skin texture goes, and it does have these kind of ridges that run along the spinal column that are painted with a reddish color. And we get down here into the thigh, you can see the hip bone there, and there is some decent musculature, but it's not really defined too well with the paint application, so it doesn't jump out at you, and you almost have to move it back and forth to really take note of the very nicely defined musculature. The calf muscle's there, but it's not really that great. You can take note to the kneecap there, and then we've got the foot sculpt, which looks decent. The nail paint, though, is really sloppy. You can see the nail paint has run up onto the toes all over the place, so that is a downside. And for some reason, the dew claw is almost non-existent on the figure. There's only like a little speckle of black, so it looks like they've sculpted out that toe right there, but then when it got time to actually put the claw in, they forgot to sculpt it in. That almost is what it appears, and it's the same way on both feet. If I get this stupid tag to move. And again, yeah, same deal over here. It's just kind of a black spot on the claw, like they forgot to put the claw in and sculpt it in, but then last minute we're like, oh, I gotta paint that still, and then just threw some paint on it. When you look up here at the tail, you can see some really nice sculpt and detail as far as the scaling as we move out into the tail, and it does almost pick up like a scoot-like appearance on the underside of the tail, which looks pretty cool. If we look at the tail from above, you can see a very nice curve in it as well. I do quite like that, and the scale work the whole way out the tail does look really good as it transitions to a little bit of a lighter blue for the tip, and you can see that the skin is stretching really nicely off of the tail as well. If we look at the opposing side, you can once again see the skin really tensing up in the neck, and I love that little blast of purple coloration that we have moving down in the neck. Such a very subtle addition, but it looks really good. Very nice skin wrinkling and skin stretching here when it comes to the neck, and playing off of this arm as well, even into the stomach region. The sculpt of the hand over here looks alright. I actually think it looks a little better on this side than it did on the opposing side. The arms are pretty scrawny, don't really appear to have too much as far as muscle tone goes or anything, but it's probably not going to be using its arms too much, and the arms were fairly thin, so I think it looks okay, just maybe could have provided a little bit more muscle definition on it. You can see quite a bit of skin bunching up and skin folding here as this leg pushes into the body right in that general vicinity, so that looks really good as well. And again, the skin texture looks pretty darn nice, honestly. The scaling all over the figure does have a pretty nice appearance, and if it had been given a really nice dark wash, I think it would have brought the detail out so good and would have made the figure honestly look a lot better. Really nice musculature over here. As we move down, you can see the thighs here, and it almost does appear in certain areas to have a little bit of a darker wash, but it definitely wasn't abundant enough to make a large difference on the figure. You can see the foot sculpt over here looks okay. The nails are again painted pretty sloppily, so nothing crazy good about that either. You can take note of the hip bone right there. And then we can run out the length of the tail. You see those scoots on the underside of the tail pick up a few osteoderms here and there, and some really nice skin stretching again as the tail is pulling this direction, so it would be really nicely stretching the skin. And then we come out to that really nice curve. So I think that the sculpt does include some pretty nice detailing and some really nice usage of the skin wrinkling and skin stretching and showing the movement in the skin, but there are just so many things as far as the appearance of the Cryolophosaurus that are off, and the proportions are off, and it just in general doesn't look like a very good Cryolophosaurus, and the head is definitely way too large. So there are some good, there are some bad, but let's get a size on this Cryolophosaurus. For a length on the Cryolophosaurus, from the tail to the head, you're looking at about 9.5 inches or 24 centimeters. And for a height, about 4 inches or 10 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Cryolophosaurus, and Robert Muldoon hiding back there behind the Cryolophosaurus. And you can see next to these figures that this Cryolophosaurus does have some pretty darn nice size. It's pretty similar in size, honestly, to the Baryonyx that we had shown you a few days ago in a different review for their 2020 line. I think it's just a little bit smaller than that Baryonyx, but still pretty darn nicely sized. So this 2020 Schleich Cryolophosaurus honestly isn't that bad, but it's not that great. It's definitely much better than I expected it to look, and if I don't take it into consideration that it is a Cryolophosaurus, and I just look at it as maybe it's a species of dinosaur I've never heard of, it again looks decent aside from the large head and large neck. It doesn't look terrible, but knowing what a Cryolophosaurus actually looks like, we can see that this doesn't exactly look like what a Cryolophosaurus would look like. And the more I'm looking at it, the more I'm starting to warm up to it a little bit. At the beginning of the review, I kind of compared it to the Schleich Acrocanthosaurus, and I don't think it's quite in that category. Although it's not too far off, it's definitely a good bit more appealing than that horrid Acrocanthosaurus that they had a few years ago. That being said, it's still not that great of a figure, and is easily the worst of the 2020 line as far as I'm concerned. I do, however, like the coloration of it. I think that the coloration was pretty darn nicely done. Nice choices of blues and everything that somehow look kind of natural on the figure and don't look out of the realm of possibility. A little bit brighter probably than I would like, but if they had given it that dark wash that they've been including so often in figures, I think it would have toned the colors down a little bit and made it look a little more realistic. But unfortunately, they chose not to do that, and that's so weird. I don't know why they do it on some figures and not others. I feel like Schleich should just do that to all their figures, and all their figures would always look better. But they didn't, so we're left with this, which again, still doesn't look terrible. I think the sculpting of the movement of the body and everything is definitely really beautifully present. It's not quite as nice as some of the other figures like the Postosuchus or the Ankylosaurus as far as shining through the movement, but it's definitely there and does still look pretty darn nice. So again, this Cryolophosaurus has some issues, but it also has some decent sides to it as well. I personally feel like I'm warming up to it a little bit, but anybody that is looking for a scientifically accurate Cryolophosaurus will certainly not be warming up to this guy anytime soon. But if you are in fact interested in this figure, I will include a link to DeJenkins.com down in the description where you can go ahead, head straight over there and pick this Cryolophosaurus up for yourself. Me personally, I definitely do not regret buying it. I think it's pretty fun, just not really that great. Not as good as some of the others, but if you are interested, make sure you check that description, find that link, click that, follow it over there, buy this Cryolophosaurus. But before you do all that, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.